My name is Megan, and the day my 6-year-old daughter was rejected by her own grandparents, something inside me shattered. My mother said, "We're tired of her. Take her and don't bring her back." And my father, my once gentle, laughing dad, just looked at me and added, "She's just too much." But they didn't expect that next time I would say, "I'm tired of you, get out of here, where are you watching this from? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to know." And if you've ever had to choose between your child and your family, this story might feel painfully familiar. Let's begin. It was supposed to be a regular pickup. A Sunday afternoon in suburban Minnesota, crisp with fall air, all golden leaves and chimneys just starting to curl with smoke. I was pulling into my parents' driveway, thinking about nothing more than how much Ellie would beg for a cookie before dinner, and whether she'd still be wearing the sparkly headband I'd styled her hair with that morning. I wasn't prepared. Not for what happened, not for what was said, and definitely not for how final it felt. I walked up the steps, boots crunching over scattered leaves, and rang the doorbell like I always did, even though I still had my key. It took a moment. Then the door creaked open just enough for my mother's face to appear. No smile. No "Hi, honey," just a cold, clipped, "We're tired of her, take her and don't bring her back." My breath caught. "Excuse me." Behind her, I saw Ellie, standing in the hallway like a forgotten coat, clutching her pink unicorn backpack and blinking fast, as if holding back tears was a skill she'd already learned at 6. Her curls were frizzy at the edges. One of her shoelaces was untied, and her little fingers were red from what looked like hours of nervous fidgeting. My mother didn't soften. "She's just difficult. She cries, she argues, she doesn't listen. We're not babysitters." I took a slow breath, willing my voice to be steady. "She's 6. Before I could say more, my father appeared behind her, arms folded across the worn cardigan I'd gotten him last Christmas. "She's just too much," he said simply, like that settled it. And in that moment, my heart dropped into my stomach. I looked at Ellie again, and she met my eyes with this quiet sort of confusion, like she was trying to understand why love suddenly had rules she hadn't been taught. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, "Ellie, come here, baby." She ran to me so fast, I nearly lost my balance. Her arms wrapped around my legs, and I could feel her trembling through my jeans. "I didn't do anything bad," she whispered. "I know," I said softly, smoothing her hair. "Let's go home." No one stopped us. Not a word from my parents. I walked her to the car in silence, strapped her into her booster seat, and shut the door gently. Then I stood there a moment, staring at the house I grew up in, the porch swing, the hedges I used to help trim, the window I'd once snuck out of in high school. Everything felt different, like someone had reached into a box labeled safe and scribbled something cruel inside. The drive home was silent. Ellie stared out the window, her thumb pressed to her bottom lip the way she always did when she was nervous. I gripped the wheel tighter than I needed to. I had no words. Only a pounding in my chest, a scream I couldn't let out. Because how do you process your parents giving up on your child? And worse, how do you forgive yourself for not seeing it sooner? That night, the apartment was quieter than usual. Not the peaceful kind. This was the thick, echoing kind of quiet that makes your own breath feel too loud. I made Ellie mac and cheese, her favorite, even though she barely touched it. I didn't push. I just sat across from her at our tiny kitchen table, the one with a chipped corner and 2 mismatched chairs, and waited. She was still wearing that headband, though it had slipped sideways now, almost like it was giving up too. Finally, as I cleared our plates, I asked softly, "Did something happen at Grandma and Grandpa's?" She didn't look up right away. She was drawing with a broken crayon on the back of an old grocery receipt, tiny hearts, each one darker than the last. "They don't like me." My throat tightened. "What makes you say that?" Ellie shrugged, eyes glued to the paper. "They always let Olivia and Jake have cookies even when they didn't finish their dinner. I asked once and Grandma said, 'You don't need more sugar.'" Olivia and Jake, my sister Claire's kids, the golden grandchildren, the ones who could do no wrong. She kept going, almost in a whisper. "They let them jump on the couch and watch TV late. I had to sit and do puzzles. They said I was being loud when I laughed." It felt like 1,000 paper cuts. I sat back down, watching her little face wrinkle with confusion she couldn't name yet. "Did they ever yell at you?" She nodded, just once, then again. "Grandpa said I was being dramatic. Grandma said I was too sensitive." She looked up then, finally. Am I too sensitive? God, that broke me. I moved to her side and wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tight as I dared. No, baby, you are exactly how you're supposed to be. She clung to me. That tiny body, that big heart, aching to be loved where it should have been safest. We stayed like that for a long time, curled on the couch under her favorite fuzzy blanket. I didn't know what to say. There were no bedtime stories tonight, no silly voices or stuffed animal arguments. Just us. Her breathing slowing as she fell asleep against me, and my thoughts spinning faster than I could catch them. I tucked her in gently, brushing her curls back from her forehead. She looked so small in that big bed, but peaceful now, at least for tonight. Then I sat on the edge of mine in the next room and stared at nothing. How had I missed this? All those weekends I'd dropped her off with smiles and thank yous. All the times I told myself she was lucky to have grandparents in her life. I had trusted them. I had believed in the idea of family, that tired, warm cliché that blood means love. And now I was questioning everything. I opened my phone and scrolled through photos. Birthday parties, barbecues, Easter egg hunts. Ellie always off to the side, always watching, always trying. The pictures told the truth I hadn't wanted to see. In one, Claire's daughter Olivia is on Grandma's lap, all smiles and cake crumbs. Ellie's sitting on the floor nearby, her smile thinner, her eyes watching Olivia instead of the camera. In another, Jake's holding a sparkler with Grandpa's hand steadying his. Ellie's sparkler is burnt out and no one's helping her light another. I felt sick. How many times had I explained away the little things? They're just tired. They don't mean it. She's younger. She'll get her turn. No, she won't. Not with them. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in weeks, and flipped to a blank page. My hands trembled as I wrote. Maybe I've been a bad mom by trusting the wrong people. The words looked harsh in black ink, but they were true. And once I wrote them, I couldn't stop. Memories poured out, times my mother had made little jabs about Ellie's energy. The way my father always picked Claire's kids to hand out presents at Christmas. I'd laughed it off. I'd let it slide. Because that's what we're taught, isn't it, to keep the peace? To be grateful for any scrap of family. To pretend love is equal when it clearly is. But Ellie deserved better. And maybe I did too. I set the journal down. Looked around our little apartment. Cramped, noisy from upstairs neighbors, lit by a single kitchen bulb with a flicker. But it felt different now. Like a fortress. Like the one place no one else would get to decide her worth. It's strange how silence changes once you start to see things clearly. That night, after Ellie had fallen asleep and my tears had run dry, I couldn't stop scrolling through old photos, pictures I'd once posted proudly, thinking they showed a happy, connected family. But when you know what to look for, the truth leaps out. There she was again. My daughter, always trying to earn love that should have come freely. At Christmas last year, she was off to the side in matching pajamas with her cousins, holding a gift she clearly hadn't opened yet. The others were already knee-deep in torn wrapping paper and shiny boxes. And in the background, my mother's hand was resting on Olivia's shoulder, not Ellie's. And there, Ellie's 6th birthday party. I hosted it at my parents' house because they said it would be easier. Claire's kids had shown up late, but the moment they walked in, my dad had whisked Jake outside to help him man the grill. Ellie had watched from the sliding glass door, cupcake untouched. I'd taken that photo. I remember thinking it was cute, the way she stood so still, watching the grown-ups. Now I saw it for what it was, loneliness disguised as quiet. It hit me like a wave, the memory of Ellie asking afterward, "Why did Grandpa let me flip burgers too?" I told her he was just busy. But now I know he wasn't too busy. He just chose someone else, over and over again. I'd been so focused on doing the right thing, being the daughter who helps, the mother who keeps the peace, that I didn't see what it was costing us. Know her, and I couldn't sleep until I put it all somewhere. So I got up, pulled out my notebook again. This time I didn't write to question myself. I wrote to remember what I knew now. Things I thought were normal, but weren't. My mom always forgetting Ellie's favorite snack, but remembering Jake S. Dad calling Claire's kids the easy ones. Being told, "Don't take it personally, she's just hard to handle." My parents skipping Ellie's preschool graduation because Olivia had a dance recital. Claire being praised for showing up with cookies, while I showed up with diapers, groceries, and a stack of unpaid bills, and no one noticed. Mom saying Ellie needs to toughen up whenever she cried. I stopped writing when the page was full. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. Something else was rising now. Not rage yet, not revenge, clarity. The kind that doesn't need to yell. The kind that grows roots deep under everything, steady and patient. The kind that whispers, never again. I stared at the list a long time. Then I flipped to a fresh page and wrote just 3 words in all caps. No, more, apologies. The next morning I woke up early not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It felt like my body had caught on to what my mind had decided. Things were going to change. I made Ellie's favorite breakfast, pancakes with smiley faces in banana slices, and packed her lunch with the little note I used to write before life got heavy and messy and tired. You are my sunshine. Love, Mommy. She smiled when she saw it. A real smile. The kind that starts in the eyes. And when I dropped her off at school, I didn't rush. I held her hand the whole walk from the car, kissed the top of her head, and said, "You're brave. I love you." She nodded and ran off, curls bouncing. I sat in the car afterward and exhaled so deeply it felt like I was shedding years. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long, long time. I looked up therapists in our area. Felt like cheating at first, like I was admitting defeat or weakness. But I kept hearing Ellie's voice from the night before. Am I too sensitive? And my mother's voice echoing behind it. She's just too much. No, not anymore. I scrolled through listings until I found one that felt right. A woman named Dr. Lisa Niles. The description said she specialized in family trauma, generational patterns, and something called reparenting. I didn't know what that meant, but it struck something inside me. Maybe it meant learning how to be the parent I never had. I hit the schedule consultation button before I could talk myself out of it. And then, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. Like the very act of choosing help was a way of lifting the weight I'd been dragging for too long. Later that night, after Ellie went to bed, I poured myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table with a blanket around my shoulders, and stared at the flickering candle I'd lit from habit. Our apartment felt different again. Still small, still worn around the edges. But now it felt like a fortress and a seed. A place where things could begin. The waiting room was quiet. Soft music played from a speaker tucked somewhere near the ficus plant by the window. The walls were pale blue, calming, or maybe just sterile enough to make you feel safe being messy inside them. I sat on the couch, knees pressed together, clutching my purse like it might run away if I let go. Ellie was at school. James was at work, and I was here, finally, after weeks of swallowing it all down and calling it strength. A door opened. "Megan!" came a warm voice. I stood, surprised at how fast my heart was beating. Dr. Lisa Niles was younger than I expected. Late 40s, maybe. Glasses, silver necklace, and the kind of face that made you want to tell the truth, even when you didn't plan to. Her office smelled like lavender and old books. There was a lamp with a linen shade and a box of tissues on the side table that I tried very hard to pretend wasn't meant for me. She sat in a soft chair across from the couch and smiled kindly. "What brings you in today?" I tried to start with something small, something safe, but what came out instead was a tremble. "I think I failed my daughter." She didn't flinch, just nodded gently. "Tell me why." And that's when it broke. Everything. I told her everything. How I'd believed my parents when they said they loved Ellie, but had their hands full. How I told myself they were just tired, just older now, just set in their ways. How I had dropped Ellie off again and again, even when something in my gut told me not to. I told her about the porch, the pink backpack, the exact words my mother said. "We're tired of her. Take her and don't bring her back." Then finally I said the thing I hadn't dared say out loud, even to myself. "I think they never really loved her." The silence that followed was a vacuum. Then, "Do you think they loved you?" That one question undid me more than anything. I don't know how long I cried. Dr. Niles didn't rush me, didn't interrupt. Just waited while I unraveled, one thread at a time, in that room with the quiet clock and the lavender oil diffuser. When I could finally speak again, my voice was cracked and low. "I think I always thought I had to earn it. Love, like if I just kept giving, kept helping, they'd see me." Dr. Niles nodded. Children who are taught to please grow into adults who tolerate mistreatment. That hit somewhere deep. She gave me tissues, not pity, not blame, just space. By the end of the session, I didn't feel fixed, but I felt heard, and that was new. Before I left, she gave me a simple assignment. Write down the things I do that protect my daughter, everyday things, big or small. Sometimes to remember who you are, she said, you need to write your way back to her. That night, after Ellie was asleep, I sat by the window with my journal. Ways I protect Ellie. I always come when she calls me. I listen, even when I don't know what to say. I pack her favorite snack, even when money's tight. I tell her she's enough, exactly as she is. I made the hard call. I walked away from people who hurt her. I paused after the last one. It didn't feel brave yet. It just felt raw, but I left it there. And when I closed the notebook, I felt something shift in my chest, not pride exactly, but a kind of awareness. A whisper that said, "You're becoming the mother you needed." The next morning, as I walked Ellie into school, she looked up at me and asked, "Can we get a library card today?" My first instinct was to say maybe later. Money was tight, the day was full, but instead I smiled and said, "Absolutely." Because this wasn't about books. It was about being the safe one, the yes one, the home. And as we left the school, she skipped beside me, her curls bouncing in the sun, already dreaming aloud about all the books she'd check out. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a woman running on empty. I felt like a woman making space for healing, for boundaries, and for Ellie's joy. One step at a time. That evening, the apartment smelled like roasted chicken and rosemary. James had cooked. He always did when he sensed something simmering under the surface. It was his way of showing up when words felt too sharp or fragile. Ellie was in her room, humming as she rearranged her books in the little shelf by her bed. She'd got her library card that afternoon. Her grin as she clutched it, like a golden ticket, was still fresh in my mind. I sat down at the kitchen table, and James placed a plate in front of me without asking. Then he sat across from me, the chair creaking a little under his weight. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that asked, "Are you ready to talk yet?" I looked at him. Really looked. James, my husband of 8 years. The man who once drove 2 hours in a snowstorm to bring me soup when I had the flu. The man who still kissed my forehead when I cried in my sleep. He'd known something was wrong. I hadn't told him everything yet, just that something happened with my parents. That was all I could say that night. But now it was time. I took a breath. They told me not to bring her back. James didn't blink, he waited. We went to pick up Ellie and my mom opened the door and said, "We're tired of her, take her and don't bring her back." Just like that, like she was a stray we'd left on the porch too long. James's hands clenched into slow fists. "What?" I nodded, barely holding it together. Then my dad added, "She's just too much." And Ellie, she heard it, James, she heard it. The room pulsed with something unsaid. The air felt thicker. But James didn't raise his voice. He didn't explode. He just stared at me, eyes darkening with hurt and disbelief. "They treated her like that," he said finally, low and tight. I nodded again, and that's when it came, his quiet fury. The kind that doesn't slam doors or shatter plates but moves in clean, decisive lines. "That's it," he said. "No more." He stood, walked to the counter, and opened our shared budgeting app. I watched as he tapped through tabs with a grim precision. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up. "I'm canceling the monthly transfer. The $600 we've been sending them every month since 2020. It's over, done." I blinked. "James, no," he said, voice calm but ironclad. "They don't get to treat our daughter like she's disposable and cash in from us every month." I didn't stop him, because the truth was, I hadn't even thought about the money. I was so tangled in the emotion, the betrayal, the heartbreak, I'd forgotten how much of our energy, our resources, had gone to a family that gave back so little. The transfer disappeared with a final tap. And just like that, a boundary I hadn't even known I needed snapped into place. James sat back down. "You should have told me sooner." I swallowed hard. I felt ashamed, like I'd put Ellie in that situation, like I should have known better. He reached across the table and took my hand, firm and steady. "You didn't put her there, they did, and you brought her home, that's what matters." The tears came again, different this time, not from guilt or grief, from relief. He held my hand as I cried quietly, and neither of us spoke for a long time. Eventually, he said, "Whatever happens with them next." We're a wall, Megan. You and me for Ellie, no cracks. I nodded into my napkin. No cracks! Later that night, while folding laundry, I realized something strange. I didn't feel helpless anymore, still hurt, still angry. But under it all, there was structure, edges, a shape to the pain, finally, and maybe, just maybe, a path forward. The next session with Dr. Niles felt heavier before it even began. I'd barely slept the night before. My dreams were strange, foggy rooms and locked doors and Ellie calling me from somewhere I couldn't reach. I didn't tell anyone I was going. James had kissed my forehead that morning and said, "Take care of you today." That was it. It was enough. In the therapy room, Dr. Niles greeted me the same gentle way she had the first time, but I felt different sitting across from her this time. Less like a guest, more like someone trying to excavate something buried. She asked, "How are you doing since our last session?" I didn't pretend. "I'm exhausted and angry." Her nod told me that was exactly the right place to start. "I can't stop thinking about it," I continued. "Not just what they said about Ellie, but everything before that, my childhood, my sister, the way love always felt conditional. What comes to mind specifically?" I stared out the window. The tree just outside had leaves already turning gold. Everything looked peaceful. But I felt anything but. I used to do all the chores every Saturday morning like clockwork, vacuuming, dishes, folding laundry. Claire never had to, not once. Dr. Niles didn't interrupt. "I thought that made me good," I went on, my voice softening. "Helpful, valuable. My mom used to say, 'You're the responsible one, Claire's just more sensitive.' Like I was the workhorse and she was the orchid, delicate, worth protecting." I remembered Claire sitting on the couch watching cartoons while I scrubbed the kitchen. Mom would praise her for her drawings, her creativity. Meanwhile, I got told I'd make a great babysitter one day. Useful, not cherished. "I kept trying," I said. "Even after I grew up. I brought groceries when money was tight. Took Ellie over so they'd have company. I thought if I just gave more, eventually I'd get back the love I'd been trying to earn since I was 10. Dr. Niles leaned forward slightly. "And when you brought Ellie, you were still showing up for them, weren't you? Not just out of convenience, but as a daughter trying to stay in their good graces." That hit me hard. Because yes, that's exactly what I'd been doing. Hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally say, "We're proud of you. You're a good mother. We love how you're raising her." Instead, they discarded her. And in doing so, finally revealed the part of themselves I'd refused to look at for years. "I used to think the hurt was about what they did now," I whispered. "But maybe it's always been about what they didn't do then." Dr. Niles gave a small, knowing nod. "The grief that comes with clarity is often the deepest." I left that session with no dramatic revelations, no fiery decisions, just quiet understanding, a puzzle piece sliding into place. That night, I found an old photo album while looking for something else. One of those thick ones with the sticky pages and plastic overlays. I opened it without thinking. And there it was. Claire at 9, dressed as a fairy princess. My mother beaming beside her, holding a wand like it was an Oscar. Me in the corner of the same photo, wearing a faded pumpkin costume because we couldn't afford 2 new ones. Holding a bowl of candy, not collecting it. Even then, I had been the helper. And suddenly, I didn't feel crazy for everything I'd been feeling. I felt awake. It started with a text. "Claire, hey, do you have a minute to talk?" About Mom and Dad. About Ellie, I had no idea. "I'm so sorry." I stared at the message for a long time. I'd read it 3 times before I believed she actually wrote it. Claire had never been cruel, not in the way our parents were, but she'd always been distant. Polished, comfortable on the pedestal they'd built for her. The idea of her reaching out now, especially about Ellie, felt foreign, but something in her words didn't sound performative. There was hesitation, guilt, so I typed back, "Okay. Come over." She arrived just after dinner, kids in tow. Olivia and Jake ran straight to Ellie's room like it was their second home. I didn't blame them. Kids know where kindness lives. Claire looked tired. No makeup. Hair pulled into a half-done ponytail. That alone told me she meant this visit. I poured us tea. She didn't speak at first, just held the mug between her palms like it was an anchor. Then finally, in a voice so small I almost missed it, "I didn't know they said that to you. About Ellie." "I swear, Megan, I didn't know." I nodded. "They did right in front of her." Claire closed her eyes. I asked Mom about it last night. She just said Ellie was having a hard day. Megan overreacted. Of course, downplay, rewrite the rewrite. She wasn't having a hard day, I said. She was being a 6-year-old, and they treated her like she was disposable. Claire's eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. I've been thinking a lot about how different things were for us growing up. That stopped me because Claire, perfect, praised, protected Claire, had never said those words before. She continued, "You know, I used to think you were just more capable, like you liked taking care of everything. That's what Mom always said. Megan's responsible. Megan doesn't mind." I let out a short, humorless breath. I didn't mind being helpful. I minded being invisible. Claire's voice cracked. I didn't see it. That's because you didn't have to, she nodded. You're right, I didn't. They always made excuses for me. When I failed a class, when I was mean to other kids. They called it growing pains. But when you forgot one thing, God, Megan, they made you feel like the world was going to fall apart. It was the first time I'd heard her say any of this, and something unspooled in my chest, tension I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. They used to tell me I was emotional, I said, but now I realize maybe I was just tired. From carrying things they never gave you. Claire swallowed. I think I used to feel guilty about that, so I stayed quiet, pretended it wasn't happening. And now, she looked me straight in the eye, now I think I was complicit and I'm sorry. We sat in silence, but it wasn't the strained kind, it was mutual knowing. Claire looked around the apartment, small, cozy, lived in. You built something good here, Ellie's lucky. She's everything, I whispered. Claire nodded. If there's ever anything you need, support, help, just someone to vent to, I want to be that, if you'll let me. I didn't respond right away, but then I poured her more tea, and that was enough. We didn't fix everything that night. But for the first time in our lives, we weren't standing on opposite sides of a family script. We were writing something new. It started with a text. From my mother, Mom, maybe we overreacted. You know how kids can be. Let's not make this bigger than it is. I read it 4 times. The first time I felt nothing. The second I felt everything. The third I heard Ellie's voice again, they don't like me. And the 4th time I knew exactly what the message was. It wasn't an apology. It was a reset attempt. A baited hook dipped in normalcy. Polished denial disguised as an olive branch. And just beneath it, a dare me to make a fuss. Dare me to stand by what I saw. Dare me to remember that in this family, the one who speaks truth is always labeled dramatic. I didn't respond. An hour later, the voicemail came, my father. Megan, I just heard your mother reached out. I hope you're not planning to drag this out. These things happen. You know how sensitive your daughter can be. It's your tone that's the issue, not ours. Let's not blow this out of proportion. My tone. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. Not because I didn't know what to say. Because, for once, I was trying to decide if they even deserved an answer. They didn't say Ellie's name, not once. Not we're sorry we hurt her. Not how is she. Not even can we talk to her. Just let's move on. I thought I'd feel rage. But what I felt, quietly humming beneath my skin, was worse. Familiarity. This was the cycle. I'd seen it before. I lived it. Minimize, redirect, blame, repeat. I closed my eyes and remembered the last time they pulled this trick. It was years ago. I was 23, freshly graduated, just moved back home to save money. Claire had borrowed my car without asking and returned it with a massive dent in the side. When I confronted her, my mom had said, "It's just a car, Megan, don't make this into a thing." When I insisted it mattered, my dad had said, "You need to watch your tone." It had always been my reaction they punished, never the offense. And now, they were doing the same to Ellie. That was my breaking point, not the betrayal, not the messages. But realizing they still, even now, saw my daughter's pain as a disruption to their comfort. And I couldn't let them near her again, not like this. James saw the unread message count and asked, gently, "Are you okay?" I handed him the phone, let him listen. His jaw tightened with every word, but he didn't rage, he didn't rant. He just nodded slowly and said, "We hold the line." And we did. I didn't reply. The next day, my mother sent another message. "Please respond. We're family." This silence is unkind. I almost laughed, because the silence wasn't unkind, it was protective, and for the first time in my life, it was mine. Later that night, I was journaling while Ellie colored beside me. She paused, looked up, and asked, "Mommy, am I going back to Grandma's house?" The crayon stilled in her hand. I met her eyes. No, baby, not unless things change. You deserve to be where you feel safe. She nodded slowly, then reached for a new color and went back to drawing. No follow-up questions, just quiet trust. And I realized something sharp and soft at the same time. She believed me, not because I made big promises, not because I said the perfect words, but because I was keeping them. Claire came by on a Thursday, not planned. She just called from her car, voice uncertain. The kids were begging to see Ellie. Is it okay if we stop by? I hesitated. Old habits told me to protect my energy, to guard the fragile calm I'd built since my parents' messages. But something in her tone, gentle, almost cautious, nudged me to say yes. When she arrived, her kids ran down the hall before I could even get their coats off. Ellie's delighted squeals drifted back a second later, the kind of laughter that lifted the whole apartment. Claire lingered in the doorway, arms wrapped tight around herself. No makeup again. Her shoulders sloped in a way that told me she hadn't been sleeping. I gestured her inside. Tea, she nodded. We sat at the kitchen table while the kids turned Ellie's room into a carnival of stuffed animals and whispers. For once, I didn't feel the need to check on them every 5 minutes. They were safe. The noise was joy. Claire stared into her mug for a long time before speaking. I've been thinking about everything you said, about Mom and Dad, about how they treated Ellie. She paused, voice tightening. About how they treated you. I waited. I don't know how I missed it all these years, she continued. Maybe I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe we had the same childhood, just different memories. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. We didn't have the same childhood. We just had the same house. Her eyes flicked to mine, full of guilt. I keep replaying things. How Mom always compared us. How Dad gave me money when I failed my math test but grounded you when you got a B in history. I shrugged. It was always 2 different rule books. Yours was written in pencil. Mine was carved in stone. She winced. God, you're right. Silence hung for a moment, thick but not hostile. Then Claire whispered, I think I was jealous of you sometimes. That startled me. Jealous of what? You had direction, they relied on you, you kept everything running. I felt like the decoration, the extra piece that looked good in pictures but didn't matter in real life. She blinked quickly as if she hated admitting it. I thought if they loved me that way, maybe it meant I was weaker. It was strange, hearing her vulnerability made mine less heavy. They didn't love you better, I said softly. They loved you easier, there's a difference. Claire's lips trembled. And I let it happen. I never stood up for you, not once. I shook my head. You were a kid, Claire, we both were. Kids don't know how to rewrite the script they're handed. For the first time in years, we looked at each other not as competitors in our parents' lopsided game, but as women who'd both been shaped by it. Differently, but painfully all the same. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I want to do better now. I want to be someone Ellie can count on too. Something in me softened. Not completely, old wounds don't vanish with one apology, but softened enough to let a new possibility in. We opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for no occasion in particular. We sipped slowly, talking about little things. Our kids' quirks, recipes we'd both failed, the neighbor down the hall who always cooked with too much garlic. And between the laughter there were long pauses, quiet stretches where I realized we weren't filling the silence with performance anymore. We were just there. At one point, I caught Ellie and Olivia tiptoeing down the hall in pajamas, whispering secrets and giggling. My chest ached, but in a good way. Like maybe the next generation didn't have to inherit everything we had. As Claire gathered her kids to leave, she hugged me awkward at first, then tighter like she meant it. I don't know how to make up for the past, she murmured. You don't have to, I replied. Just be present now. She nodded, tears bright in her eyes. After they left, I cleaned up the mugs and the half-empty wine bottle, humming to myself. The apartment smelled like cinnamon from the candle I'd lit earlier. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel heavy with loss. It felt lighter, like maybe we'd cracked a window in a suffocating room. Ellie padded into the kitchen, hair tangled from pillow forts and laughter. She leaned against me, sleepy-eyed, and whispered, Aunt Claire's nice. I kissed the top of her head. She is! And for once, I believed it. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare ones where the air smelled like pancakes and fresh coffee and the day felt slow enough to savor. Ellie was still in her pajamas, twirling around the living room with her stuffed unicorn, giggling as James read the comics aloud with silly voices. I remember thinking, this is peace. This is what safety feels like. And then the knock came. 3 sharp raps. Not a neighbor's friendly tap, not a package delivery. Too heavy, too familiar. My heart sank before I even opened the door. When I did, there they were. My parents, standing in the hallway of my apartment building as if they belonged there. Dressed nicely, Mom in her pearl earrings, Dad in his best jacket. They held a bakery bag, the kind with powdered sugar already dusting the outside. "Surprise," my mother said, forcing a smile. "We brought cookies." Cookies, as if a bag of sugar could erase words carved into my daughter's heart. I didn't move to open the door wider. "Why are you here?" "We thought we'd drop by," Dad said, his tone deliberately cheerful. "It's been too long, no need to drag things out, right? Families argue, they make up." Behind me, I felt Ellie freeze. She had crept to the hallway, her unicorn dangling by one leg. Her little body stiffened the moment she saw them. I bent slightly, blocking her view. "Go back inside, sweetheart." She obeyed without a word. And that silence, that quiet obedience from a child who used to beam at their arrival, hurt worse than any accusation. I straightened and met their eyes. "You don't get to just show up." Mom's smile faltered. "Megan, don't be so dramatic. We said some things we didn't mean. Everyone overreacted." "No," I said firmly. "You said exactly what you meant, and Ellie heard you." Dad's jaw tightened. "You're making this bigger than it is. Kids forget. She'll move on." My hands trembled, but I kept my voice steady. "She doesn't forget. And neither do I." The hallway seemed to shrink, the walls pressing closer. I could hear James standing behind me now, silent but solid, a wall at my back. Mom shifted the bag of cookies, her voice tightening. "You're really going to throw away your entire family over one bad day?" And that's when something inside me went very still, because I realized they didn't see it as cruelty. They saw it as a day, an inconvenience, something to sweep under the rug. I looked at them both. The 2 people who had taught me that love had conditions, that I had to work for scraps of approval. And now they wanted me to hand my daughter over to that same cycle. I wouldn't. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice low but clear. "You hurt my daughter. You made her feel unwanted in your home, until you can look her in the eye and take real responsibility for that, not excuses, not minimization. You have no place in our lives." Dad's eyes narrowed. "You're choosing this fight." I shook my head. "No, you chose it when you told a 6-year-old she was too much." For a moment, the 3 of us just stood there, me in the doorway, them in their pressed clothes, holding cookies like peace offerings that had already crumbled. Finally, Mom sighed, her smile gone now. "You've changed, Megan. You used to know how to keep the peace." I felt James's hand slide gently to the small of my back, steadying me. "No," I said. "I used to know how to stay silent." That's not peace, that's survival, and I'm done teaching my daughter that silence is love. I stepped back just enough to make it clear the conversation was over. "Goodbye." Then I closed the door. For a moment I leaned against it, heart pounding, the echoes of their voices still vibrating in my chest. But then I heard Ellie's small footsteps padding back into the hallway. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Were they mad?" she asked softly. I crouched down, cupping her cheeks. "Maybe. But that's not our problem anymore. What matters is you're safe. And you're loved, always." She nodded, pressing her unicorn into my chest as if offering me its protection too. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a scared little girl facing her parents. I felt like a mother, a protector, a wall no one was breaking through. It had been months. Months of silence. Months of therapy, of long walks with Ellie after school, of Friday night pizza and Saturday dance classes. Months of quiet dinners with James where we talked about the future, not the past. Months where slowly my life stopped feeling like a defense mechanism and started feeling like living. Then the knock came. It was quieter this time. Hesitant, James was in the kitchen helping Ellie with her spelling homework. I opened the door, and there they were again, but not like before. My parents looked older, not in the slow, graceful way that comes with time, in the way that comes with loss, panic, pride swallowed whole. Dad's jacket was wrinkled. Mom's eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying. Neither of them wore that brittle, practiced smile they used to slip on like armor. This wasn't a social visit. "Hi, Megan," my mother said quietly. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. I waited. "We're in trouble," Dad added, looking down at the floor. "The bank foreclosed. The house is gone." It hit me like a strange echo. The house is gone. The one with the porch where they stood and dismissed my daughter like she was nothing. The one I used to clean every Saturday as a teenager while Claire watched TV. Gone. "I see," I said flatly. "We didn't know where else to go," Mom said. "We thought maybe if you could help us for a while." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They wanted a place to stay, or money, or both. Something inside me cracked, but it wasn't the usual break. It wasn't the old wound. It was something else. I called over my shoulder, "Ellie, stay in the kitchen, please." Her voice chirped back, "Okay, Mommy." Then I stepped outside and closed the door gently behind me. I looked at them, really looked. These were the same people who told me my child was too much, who treated her like a burden and then gaslit me into silence, who raised me to believe that love had to be earned, and when I stopped trying, they punished me for it. Now they wanted me to forget all of it because they were uncomfortable. "I'm sorry for what's happened," I said slowly, "but you're not staying here." Mom blinked. "Megan." "No," I said, my voice clear. "You told me you were tired of my daughter. You stood on my porch and said that, and now I'm standing on mine telling you this. I'm tired of you." My father opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "For years, I begged for crumbs of kindness. I made excuses. I let you around my child, thinking maybe you'd change. You didn't. We didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said, and I believe you. For the first time in my life, I believe you." The weight in my chest wasn't fear, it was truth. And I choose to protect Ellie. That means keeping her away from people who make her question her worth, even if those people are her grandparents. They looked stunned. My mother started crying, but I didn't reach for her. My father shook his head like he couldn't believe this was happening. "We're family," he muttered. "No," I said. "Family is who protects you when it costs them something. Family is who sees you. You stopped being family when you made her cry and called it normal." I turned to the door. "Megan," my mother whispered, voice cracking, "please, we have nothing." I paused, hand on the knob, and I thought of every night I cried alone as a kid, wondering what I'd done wrong. I thought of Ellie's tear-streaked cheeks the day they told her not to come back, and I said, "Now you know how it feels." Then I walked back inside and shut the door. I locked it. James looked up from the table. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "They won't be coming back." Ellie looked up from her notebook. "Can I show you my drawing now?" I smiled. "Yes, baby, I'd love to see it." She held it up, a crayon sketch of 3 people holding hands under a tree. The words at the top said, "Our happy house." And just like that, I knew I hadn't just closed a door. I'd built a new one where love lived. There are certain sounds that define peace. The shuffle of Ellie's dance shoes on the hardwood floor as she practices her little routines. The hum of James singing off-key while doing dishes. The soft buzz of Claire's laughter over a cup of coffee, no longer strained or careful. Those sounds filled our apartment now, not as a shield, but as a rhythm, a life. After the day my parents showed up, things didn't collapse. They just clarified. I didn't hear from them again, not after I closed the door, not after the voicemail went unanswered, not after I unfollowed my mother on social media and blocked her number. It was the kind of silence I used to fear. Now it felt like sunlight. Ellie and I had settled into something gentle. Her therapy sessions were still ongoing, but she had started to speak more freely to Dr. Niles, to me, even to herself in the mirror when practicing her dance moves. One evening she said, "Grandma made me feel yucky, but I don't feel yucky anymore." I could have cried. Instead, I just nodded and said, "That's because you're safe now." Claire became a regular visitor, no longer out of obligation or curiosity, but because she genuinely wanted to be present. She'd bring banana bread or a book for Ellie, and we'd sit on the balcony with mugs of tea, wrapped in old throw blankets, talking about everything and nothing. One night, Claire told me, "I asked the kids what they think love looks like. Olivia said, 'It looks like Aunt Megan's house.'" I smiled. James and I had changed, too. We had always been solid, but something deeper settled between us. There was more touch, little ones. His hand on the small of my back when I passed him in the kitchen. My head on his shoulder during movie nights. His quiet whispers at bedtime, "You did good today. You're doing good." I started to believe him. More than that, I started to believe me. The version of me that used to walk on eggshells now danced barefoot in the living room. The one who used to wonder if she was lovable now looked in the mirror and saw someone soft, fierce, and utterly enough. One evening, while folding laundry, James said, "You know, I used to think you were strong because you held everything together. But now I think your strength is that you finally let it fall apart." I looked at him. It didn't fall apart. It fell into place. We kissed. It wasn't passionate or cinematic. It was quiet, slow, certain. The way a home feels when you stop bracing for impact. Ellie had picked out a new bedtime story from the library, a book about animals who build a house together. At the end, the main character, a little rabbit, says, "Our house is happy because we made it with love." Ellie looked up at me and said, "Just like us." Yes, baby, just like us. It was the last week of school when Ellie came home with the envelope. She clutched it like it was made of glass, her tiny fingers gripping the corners, eyes wide with excitement. "Don't open it until after dinner," she instructed me, stern and dramatic like a teacher giving final exam instructions. James raised an eyebrow, amused. "What's in there?" Ellie grinned. "It's a secret." So we waited. She fidgeted through spaghetti, hummed her way through carrots, barely touched her garlic bread. I'd never seen her so wound up. And this is a kid who once waited for Santa by staring out the window until 2 a.m. when the dishes were done and the table was cleared. She placed the envelope in front of me with a flourish. "Now you can open it." I glanced at James, then slid my finger under the seal. Inside was a folded sheet of thick construction paper, covered in crayon drawings and glitter glue. Across the top, in bubbly letters traced with gold sparkles, it read, "MY Hero Project." I turned the page, and there I was. Crayon me messy bun, heart-shaped earrings, a pink shirt that read "One Mom," standing beside a giant green dragon. The dragon had yellow eyes and red flames coming out of its nose, but it wasn't scary. Not at all. In Ellie's careful handwriting below, it said, "My hero is my mommy. She is brave and kind. She fought a dragon called Pain. Now she builds castles out of love." I had to sit down. The breath left me in a way I didn't expect, like a balloon someone had let go too fast. My throat burned, my eyes welled, and for a long moment I couldn't speak. James read over my shoulder. I felt his hand settle softly on my back. "She did this all by herself," he whispered. I nodded. Ellie stood in front of me, suddenly nervous. "Do you like it?" "Baby," I said, voice cracking, "I love it." She beamed. Then she pointed to the dragon.